I'm going to adapt that to fit the players that we have, right? I'm not going to try to get guys and ask them to do stuff that they're not able to do.
The best team in college football and getting off the field on 75% of the time on third down. After that, down, they're heading to the sideline, which is what you want out of a defense. But today we're going to talk about that as well as a philosophy of Havoc. And joining me to discuss all those things is Zach Feltrop, who was the defensive coordinator in 2024 for Marietta, now moved on to Valpo and is the defensive coordinator there. Coach, congratulations on the move to the FCS level and on having a great year. And thank you for taking the time to be here on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
So, Coach, I mentioned Havoc as a big part of the reason you guys are able to get off the field. And that's, as we got talking beforehand, a big part of your philosophy. So we'd love to have you share that with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So some people might have heard it before. A lot of people talk about it. We track our Havoc rate. And I got it from Clemson when they were winning national championships. And essentially what it is, it's everything that disrupts the offense, right? So it's, your sacks, your TFLs, takeaways, quarterback hits, passes defended, anything that leads to the offense being disrupted. So you add all that up and you divide it by how many plays you're on the field for, and it comes out with a percentage. And that percentage is telling you exactly how much you're affecting an offense for, a game, a season, however you want to do it. So we track that in every game. Like we had talked about in 2022, I kind of set the rate at 27% is our goal. And that the number's kind of weird, but I went back and looked at our wins and losses. And in the 6 games that we won, we were 27% or better. And in the 4 games we lost some close games. And I was like, what are we doing? I'm trying to figure out what we're doing and why some of the stuff isn't working in these close games. And it's, everything was under 27%. And that kind of became our benchmark of success is we have to be over 27% Havoc and get after people. And it's what we've done the last 2 years. And obviously this year we were pretty good at getting off the field on third down.
I think the key to that Havoc is you get people off schedule. And you end up in third down situations that they don't want to be in more often than not. You look at offenses today, a lot of them have the ability to take big chunks out of a defense. So when you can limit that and keep them off their schedule, put them into a 2nd and 8, put them into a 3rd and long, you're playing with an advantage. And that's what you guys were able to do. We'd love to hear a little bit about the things for you, the elements of your defense that you feel allow you to knock people off schedule, allow you to have that Havoc rate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we at Marietta especially this year, we're very heavy stunt, pressure, sims, things like that. And we did them on all downs. And like you said, the way the game is now, 2nd and long sometimes is like 3rd down and people were just throwing the ball. It used to be like people would run the ball, try to get in the manage and throw the ball, or throw the ball on 1st down and then run the ball for 2 downs. But there's so many different wide open philosophies now in college football and in just football in general that any down you have to have that pressure packages and be able to get after people and make it all kind of look the same. You can't just tip them off that it's coming because people are going to know that with all the film capabilities and replay on the sidelines now, things like that. So people, if you're kind of only doing one thing out of one package or only bringing one blitz out of one look, people are going to be able to figure it out pretty quick. You know what I mean? So we try to have multiple pressures out of multiple different looks. We play a lot of different fronts. And obviously it helps to have good guys that can get to the quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of those guys, this is your philosophy. How much of this is ingrained in the players? Do they think about and track Havoc rate and understand the importance of that?
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. Over my years there, the kids were really invested in hitting the goals. And Coach, after every game on a Sunday, we would have a team meeting, and Coach Waddle would stand up. And part of the team meeting is telling them what goals we hit and what goals we didn't hit. And the defensive guys will always be sitting there and and the first one everybody wants to know is, do we hit our pursuit goal? Because that's the biggest thing for us, is getting everybody to the football, flying around. And we grade it pretty hard. When I was at Geneva, we used to call it loaves. and we had the 0 loaf policy and no loafs and whatnot. And I'll never forget coming here, and Coach Waddle was like, well, our pursuit goal was 96%. And I was like, why isn't it 100? And he goes, well, if you make it 100, then you can't grade it hard. And you can't give people examples. And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. So we grade hard, and man, people were, when they get their grade sheets, they're like, what was your pursuit grade? What was your pursuit grade? You know what I mean? Like asking the guys, and they want to see who had the best and whatnot. But, the second goal was obviously the Havoc rate. They want to know like how much we're affecting the other team's offense and whatnot. And then the third one was the rushing goal. They wanted to make sure that we were hitting our rushing goal, and we, for the most part, did all three of those a lot.
So let's dig into this pursuit goal a little bit of 96%. Obviously, pursuit to the football is an important thing. The more people you get to the ball, the better, the more good things are going to happen for you on defense. Yet at the same time, when I watch a lot of practices today, I mean, the focus has become tempo, and, I probably imagine the good on good periods that you guys might have might be an effective way, but how do you make sure that you're training that in practice, especially in your team, in your scout periods?
It's really just, a buy-in from, number one, the coaches. That's got to be number one thing. And I'm sure you've seen it. Coaches a lot of times want to, like, as soon as the play is over, grab the guy and start talking to him about what happened and whatnot. And it's like, oh, no. Go run to the ball. You can talk to him later. You know what I mean? And you get that buy-in from those guys and getting them to the football, and then it's a buy-in from the players. Because when it's important to the coaches, it's important to the players. You know what I mean? And it's really important to me and Coach Waddle and anybody that works for us. And no loaf, getting to the ball. We have multiple different ways to drill this in practice. We have like 3 different pursuit drills. We have a cone pursuit drill that we run twice a week. A couple an interception pursuit drill, and then we have like a fun one when they can kind of just go crazy and everybody's running around. But it's more of just a mindset and a philosophy, like, I'm going to get to the football. You know what I mean? And when people see that paying off, they want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like anything else. If it's working, then everybody wants to do it. And pursuit is the great thing because it's always going to work. You know what I mean? Like, nothing bad ever happens by running to the football. And I tell people this all the time. The great thing about pursuit is it's nothing more than effort. It requires no talent, right? You don't have to be good at something to try. So it really puts everybody on the level playing field. And we've been lucky enough to have a number of All-Americans on our defense the last 6 years. And it doesn't matter if you're an All-American or if you're a guy down the depth chart. Everybody can run to the football. And that's just the way we approach it.
Yeah, on the offensive side, we used to talk to our guys about this a lot. And, we had a situation when I took over as offensive coordinator. I felt like our receivers were just so disconnected and selfish. And you would see ball not thrown to them, and they just shut it down and watch play. And we reinforced with them. And it's great when something happens that you could say, see, this is why. And then you have that clip forever that you can show as this is in your installation. And we were playing Otterbein, and one of those things we caught like a 4 vertical in the seam right down, and our guy got hit, ball came out. But because our guys didn't shut it down and they had bought into that, we got on that ball, right? And you think about all those situations you see when you're watching football games, like, man, they would have had the ball if that guy over there would have still been running. He shut it down. He didn't get there. He would have been on the ball. Like, those opportunities present themselves. How are you training it? What kinds of things do you have, those tools to, on day one, put those up, those new guys coming into the program, seeing this is what it's about. And this is why our guys care about this pursuit grade so much.
So along the same lines that you were talking about, so we had Drake Newberger for 5 years. And Drake Newberger was the best effort player I've ever had. I mean, he had a lot of other stuff. You know what I mean? He was fast. The last couple of years, he got big. He had great instincts. He was tough. But I've never seen a player that could hit the quarterback on a screen pass, turn around and make the tackle at the line of scrimmage. Because, we would point the screen and have it to spill, and he would just immediately hit the quarterback, turn around, and sprint the whole time. You know what I mean? And it was unbelievable. It was amazing to watch. And I have probably 50 clips of him tracking people down from the backside, We were playing Heidelberg one year, and they're unbelievable running back, Yerby, for a long time. And Drake, he busted a run against us a few years ago, and Drake tracked him all the way down, knocked him out at like the 5-yard line. It was like an 80-yard run, and we ended up holding him to a field goal, and allowed us to have an opportunity to win the game. And I have so many of those clips from him, and not just him, other people. But I think when you have a player with success like that, and people see it, and it's like, man, is he good because he's doing that, or is he good because he's good? Now, Drake was good because he was good, but it doesn't help that people are thinking like, well, he's a 3-time All-American, and he's flying around running the ball. Like, we can do that. That's easy. And I feel like a lot of people really buy into that and get there. And I can't remember who I heard this from. I was at a camp somewhere, and people just say, defense is nothing but tackling and pursuit. Scheme is irrelevant. You could have any kind of scheme, but if you pursue and tackle, you're going to be good on defense. And it's true. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you're playing a 4-3, 3-4, odd stack, whatever. You know what I mean? If you pursue and tackle on defense, you're going to be all right.
Definitely. Let's get back into this Havoc a little bit. One more question, actually. You mentioned you have the goals, and certainly the guys are looking at it. Do you do anything as a unit to reward any of those outstanding efforts that you see?
Yeah, we've done some stuff before. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a great cook, right? So whatever you want, I can make up. So the guys will come over for dinner at times and whatnot. We'll talk about it and things. So I make them nice meals and different stuff like that. But
so what's the go-to meal? What's the one that has been the most popular?
Well, the easiest one to feed a bunch of people, right, is making homemade sauce. Right, we'll make a big vat of it, man. And what I do is I'm a big barbecue guy, so I'll smoke the tomatoes first before I make the sauce. So I'll cut them all up and put them in the smoker and smoke them. And that's how my kids and my wife like it. They're like, "You've ruined it for us. We can't eat it any other way now." So we'll do that, and we get a bunch of people. But most of the guys like ribs and stuff like that. So we'll do the ribs. And I just had the defensive seniors over on Friday, and we got one of those big prime rib roasts. It's like a 13-pounder. And I had that thing on all day and pulled it off. And we had some prime rib roast sandwiches and whatnot for it because they were such a special group. So.
Well, I'll tell you now, this gives me a reason to come out to Valpo.
That's right, man. I'm telling you.
Going back into the Havoc rate, and you mentioned it's pursuit and tackling and all those things. Obviously, we do need to look at things and how we scheme it, but we could get crazy with all the things we can draw up. It all looks great on the board. How do you make sure that you're putting things into a structure that allows you to teach it in a way that your players don't have to think a lot, that they could go out there and play fast?
So I always use this joke when I'm showing the defense to recruits. And I have 3 young children, right? I have a 5-year-old that's going to be 6 here right before Christmas in like a week. I have a 4-year-old son. My oldest, I have 2 boys. And quick side note, so I coach linebackers, right? My oldest son was named Sam. My middle son's named Mike. And if I would have had a third son, he'd been named Will, and my wife would have killed me, but that's what we'd have done. And don't ask me how I talked her into it. She was on board with Sam, and then after that, it just kind of rolled. But anyways, I tell the recruits, I say, I have these 3 young children, and they've taught me not to put the round blocks in the square holes, right? So, listen, we have a system and we have a scheme, but I'm going to adapt that to fit the players that we have, right? I'm not going to try to get guys and ask them to do stuff that they're not able to do. So when we had Drake, we were rushing him off the edge and letting him go. This past year, we had our 2 defensive ends were former linebackers, so they understood coverage and things like that. So we were able to do a lot of stuff, dropping them out and some stuff like that they were familiar with that was easy to them and things like that. You know what I mean? And obviously, Coach Waddle's big on setting rules. You know what I mean? He doesn't want memorization. He wants rules. And we sit down at the beginning of the year and we start looking at some stuff that we like, some change ups to what we do and whatnot. And it's always like, well, what are the rules to this? What are the rules to this? And we got to hammer it out. And if we can't hammer out the rules, then we put it on the back burner until either we can or maybe we don't like it anymore. You know what I mean? But big rules got to make it easy for the kids. And once they learn the rules, you can run the defense.
Yeah, I think the other thing, no matter what the scheme is, there's going to be the techniques that go along with it. Remember a clinic I moderated with Dan Lanning a few years back, and a good portion of that was how we train our blitzers, right? How we train these guys to come in there. I mean, you see a lot of younger kids, the lower levels, they just go running in blindly. And yes, at the lower levels, that creates havoc. Gets you in trouble at the college level, gets you in trouble, at the high school level. So how are you training that? Because I'm sure that's an important part of this, that as they apply their rules, then there's this technique you're going to ingrain in them.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll get guys online, and it's mostly about giving them, for lack of a better word, objectives, right? So, like, are you an edge guy? Are you an inside guy? Are you a read guy? You know what I mean? So, and you keep the rules the same, so you act like they're almost the D lineman. You know what I mean? So, like, if you were the defensive end on this, what would you do? You know what I mean? If they read you, who are you going to take? Certain things like that. You know what I mean? So, like, it starts with what is their objective, right? And then you teach the techniques off of that. You know what I mean? If I'm the edge guy, I can go a little bit wider and I can get after it. We're a big mesh charge defense. So, like, I know that it lets the cutback lane up and whatnot, but we do almost exclusively zone blitzes now. So we always have eyes to be able to scrape back. So we're not as worried about the cutbacks as much as you would be like in a true man scheme or something like that where there's not going to be anybody there. But we like to charge the mess, and we really want the penetration getting into the backfield and trying to make it look the same to the quarterback. So if you're blitzing on a zone read, right, he doesn't know whether to pull it or give it because he's running right at you. You know what I mean? And you talked about getting him off schedule and whatnot, and it creates that confusion for the quarterback. What am I going to do? And if he guesses wrong, then it's going to be a big play. And if he guesses right, then the guys that are supposed to scrape and take that responsibility will be able to come back over and make the play. You know what I mean? So, we talk a lot about that in the installs and whatnot.
You mentioned the mesh charge, and we got into one of my years being more of because of our quarterbacks, more of a zone read, but especially a power read team. We were running a ton of power read, and I can tell you my least favorite technique for that play was the mesh charge. I think the mesh charge, when you have that guy selling out and committing to it, it changes the timing than that guy who's playing cat and mouse with you. And you can, you can get a quarterback who does a great job at manipulating the ball, but now when it's coming, it becomes more difficult. So I do love that technique on the defensive side. I hate it on the offensive side. But I'm sure there's some key coaching in doing that the right way so that your guys not coming up with air all the time and you are, doing things that lend itself to creating havoc. What are some of the coaching points you emphasize on that mesh charge?
So you can't mesh charge everybody. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not feasible to be able to do that and play sound defense. As much as I would love to get after the offense in the backfield all the time. But again, it goes back to your rules. So, if we have somebody responsible for the edge out there, we don't always make our defensive ends responsible for the edges. You know what I mean? Like, one of them usually is, not always, depending on the coverage and whatnot. But, we try to get those guys, getting, if they don't have contain or the edge, right? They're not a box player is what we call them. Then we really want them creating penetration. We tell them, don't worry about your edge. Penetration is key. And those are the guys that are creating the havoc, because we're able to get those guys up the field and force the ball right now to have to cut. You know what I mean? And once the ball's cut, then we feel like we can be able to get over blocks and get to the ball. But what we don't want to do is allow any vertical seams. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of times in the surf, in the straight box technique, things like all these techniques these guys are playing sometimes, and, we'll do those too, but if you're always doing it and people know it, they can scheme you up to be able to hit those vertical seams, because that's what the offense wants. You know what I mean? They want to be able to get vertical, because at the end of the day, they got to move the ball. And no one wants to have to keep going sideways to move the ball. So we try to coach like, hey, your aiming point is here. You know what I mean? And depending on where the mesh is taking place, you're trying to get into his face, but not truly into it. You know what I mean? Like, you want to stop about a yard from it. And if he's holding the ball at that point, you're hitting the mesh, and it's going to be a fumble. You know what I mean? Or a big play, because then they're not going to be there. So, like, as you're going through, you start to gear down just a hair as you go through, and then the ball's still there, bang, you're just hitting the mesh. You know what I mean? At your player. But, yeah, so that's it. Like, the one side of the defense is going to be the penetrator, and the other side of the defense is going to be the box.
So along with the rules, the techniques, the things we talked about here, a mesh charge, whatever it might be, when you're sitting down and looking at the film and the game planning process starts, how are you finding the opportunities to create havoc and put together that game plan?
Yeah, so it's going to start when we first start to, like, on Sunday, when we first take a look at the film. We're going to try to break it down and get all the tendencies like everybody else is. And we're going to look at field position, packet personnel, what they're doing in this. You know, you'll find that some people in certain personnel sets have their tendencies of, I'm going to slide to the strength, I'm going to slide to the boundary in 12, I'm going to slide to the strength in 11, just certain things like that. So obviously that's where we start. And it's like, all right, well, if they're going to do this, then this is what we're going to run. And that's into the game plan. The other thing you're going to look at is how have they done against great players? Because, again, we've been lucky enough to have some really good players on our defensive line, especially. Are they always going to slide to them? Are they going to try to double them? Are they going to try to use the back? Different things like that. And then you're going to be able to try to adjust some stuff off the other side or help him out in that ways. But it really starts on that Sunday and Monday when you're game planning. And you're going to look through the personnels and the percentages and things like that. And you're going to be like, okay, I like this. I like this. I think I like this. And then how we would do practice is on Tuesdays, we would have our first day of practice. And it was all normal down stuff. You know what I mean? But you know how the offense is, they're always off schedule. So they want to also do team pass during 1v1 team pass on Tuesdays. So we can kind of sprinkle in some of those third down stunts and pressures that we think we might like and see how it looks versus our offense, and some packages, rush packages, nickel packages, and whatever. And we can kind of sprinkle that in and see if we like it, because it's a one-on-one period and we're just trying to get the speed down. And we'll go through our normal down set, and maybe we'll get a couple of plays of it, like maybe one or two. But for the most part, you're just working on normal down stuff. And then Wednesday, we'll do a normal down set and we'll do a red zone set, right? But you also get a 2-minute period at the end with your offense. So, again, you can throw a package in and kind of see how it looks. And everybody's competitive. Everybody wants to win a 2-minute drill, right? But you're able to really rep some stuff in that, especially early in it, to be able to see, hey, do I like this still versus these routes and tempo and things like that? Is it feasible? Can the guys understand it? Yeah. And then on Thursdays, right, all we do is third down, the whole practice, defensively. So we'll rep longs, shorts, mediums, and just kind of make the set in there. And then it becomes more, you're working against the scout team, but again, this is another thing that I got from Coach Waddle. You're really challenging the defense to stop them at a high clip. We want to stop guys at least 80% of the time on those Thursday practices, you know, and we're keeping track as coaches. And if we don't hit it, then we'll have some adjustment periods. But we're going to make sure that those guys know that this is an important day. And it's a light day, it's special teams, and then it's third down. And we're just flying around trying to get after it real quick right before you go into the game.
So logistically in those practices, you mentioned adjustment periods. How would you work that in? You guys have time built into the schedule? Do you just take time out of something?
Talking adjustment periods, more of like, you know, a get right period.
Get them right.
Maybe after the game of like, hey, you know, we got to make sure this is right. Why don't you guys go run a lap or a gas or something? Yeah.
Well, some great stuff that you shared with us here today. Obvious, you know, that these things have worked for you here, and I'm sure you're looking at making these work at the next level now. You guys moving up to the FCS certainly have earned that opportunity, and just want to wish you and everybody that's moving over with you, Andy, Reed, some other guys, the best of luck here in 2025 with Valpo.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on and letting me share some philosophy.
Thank you again for listening to the Coach and Coordinator podcast. As you've noticed, we now have a series of podcasts on the Coach and Coordinator Network. We're really excited about this series approach and what each different host brings to us. Plus, we have some roundtables, which essentially are hostless podcasts, starting with Think Tank. We recorded that first Think Tank with Dan Gonzalez, Dub Maddox, and Josh Herring, and I'll tell you, it was so detailed and so good in what they put into it. I know you're going to enjoy that series as well as all the other series we have on the Coaching Coordinator Network. Be sure to follow all of our sponsors currently, that Signature Championship Rings, Modern Football Technology, and Titan GPS. Check out our 10% Toolkit, where we highlight all of our partners and what they have available to you, as well as some special offers. The link to that is in the show notes. Check out our enhanced show notes at coachandcoordinator.com. We'll be adding content that works better on video or as a download. And follow us on X at Coach K Grabowski.